Hello class, this week we're looking at what is totalitarianism. We're continuing on with looking at what's happening in Russia. So where we left off is Russia had a huge revolution. Actually, they had many different revolutions. First starting with Bloody Sunday, then going to the March Revolution, and last it ends with the Bolshevik Revolution, where Lenin and the Bolshevik Party take over Russia. When we finished our last chapter, we have Lenin dying, and we have sort of this power struggle between Stalin and Trotsky. Now, Trotsky ends up losing this power struggle, and Stalin becomes the next sort of leader of the Communist Party in Russia. Now, Stalin, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to look at what is totalitarianism. It's quite the long word, fun to say. We're also going to look at Stalin's goal of transforming the Soviet Union into this idea of totalitarianism. Last thing we're going to look at is Stalin's state-controlled economy programs, and we're going to look at Soviets' daily life. Okay. So the government of total control. So up until this point, Lenin, he actually had some capitalism in the Russian communist system. It was not completely communist. Stalin takes that away. He decides to turn Russia into a state of total control. That is what totalitarianism means, okay? So it means that the government dominates every aspect of life. That means if you want to go to church, the government is going to be there watching you. If you want to if you want to start a small business, the government is going to be there watching you. They have complete control. They want to know what is going on at all times possible. So, a totalitarian leader, he is often very dynamic because most people do not want to just give up their power, but they are persuaded to slowly give up their power by a leader who is sort of dynamic or has a great personality. Well, Joseph Stalin was this type of leader. He was very charismatic. He knew what to say to get what he wanted. Now, while Stalin was very charismatic, he's also using sort of this idea of fear tactics to also make sure that if anyone tries to oppose him or go opposite, say anything opposite of him, he has the control to sort of stop it before other people realize. Now, one way that a totalitarian leader is going to do this is police terror. So this is the rise of sort of the secret police, or what we would call the KGB in Russia. So the government, what they're doing is they're using police to spy on people, and if anyone sort of decides to go against what Stalin wants, they're going to intimidate those people. And so if you were to picture, these are the types of things where they're tapping your phone to make sure that they're listening in on your phone conversations, or they're tapping in on things in your apartment. This is the type of police terror that's starting to happen in Russia. Next is indoctrination. Now, what indoctrination is that now the government is also actually shaping people's minds. And the way that they're doing this is, if we think of totalitarianism, that means government controls everything. So the government also controls education. And what they're doing is they're educating these children at a very, very young age to think a certain way about Russia and about their government. Now, we've talked about propaganda before. Indoctrination also works with propaganda. So there are tons of things being advertised around Russia, looking at the glory of Russia and the USSR, okay? So they're actually trying to sort of brainwash people into thinking a certain way from a very young age. That's indoctrination. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is we have, as I already said, propaganda and censorship. Now, as I said before, we've talked about propaganda. Okay? The government also is going to control all of the mass media. They are going to crush any sort of opposing view. So if anyone is trying to go against what Stalin and his government are doing, they're not going to allow that on the media itself. Now, in the US and in Taiwan, we think of this idea of free press. Okay? That means that people in the news have the right to report their opinions and the right to report what is actually going out there. But in Russia, they're sort of cutting this off. Now the government will only show people what they want to show people. Next thing we have is religious and ethnic persecution. So during this time in the USSR, basically anyone who was religious was branded as someone going against the communist government. So religion was sort of made illegal. People were no longer allowed to openly practice their religion. The other thing is that ethnic minorities who were not Russian by blood, they often were also persecuted during this time as well. They were deemed enemies of the state. So, totalitarianism. We have Joseph Stalin. This is a lovely picture of him. Okay? Here, if we picture Joseph Stalin is in control of the state government. He's in control of the church. He's in control of your family life, economy, school, and media. So this is what totalitarianism is. It's controlling all these different things. And as we see here, we have sort of a poster say, "The Big Brother is watching you." This is supposed to be Joseph Stalin. And it's saying Joseph Stalin is everywhere. Stalin builds a totalitarian state. So first, when Stalin gets in, is he sort of starts setting up this secret police. As we said, police terror. And anyone who goes against his opinion, they're being attacked. Okay? The next thing that is sort of an important thing to note is he starts attacking people in his own party. This is called the Great Purge. So in 1937, Stalin has already sort of built up this totalitarian state where everyone is being watched. Now, Stalin has sort of decided that he doesn't want any other person who even shares the same beliefs as him to be in his government. So he goes on a terror campaign, and he goes against any perceived enemies. Now, perceived, that is sort of saying that these are not actually enemies, but if they have sort of if they say one thing that Stalin does not agree with, he's going to kill them. So by the end of 1938, we have Stalin has complete control, and there's an estimate that there are 8 to 13 million people who are dead because of this Great Purge. That means 8 to 13 million people who probably have never done anything wrong, have never hardly even said anything against the USSR, are now dead just because they're perceived enemies. Okay? The other thing that's sort of curious about the Great Purge is that Stalin actually wipes out and kills many people in the Bolshevik party. That is his political party. He is killing people who are in his own political party and calling them perceived enemies. These are the people that actually started the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. So you can imagine what sort of person Stalin is by the fact that he's killing these mass amounts of people. So as we see here, we have Russian propaganda and censorship. Okay. So again, we're going back to that idea of what kind of propaganda is the government controlling the newspapers, radios, movies. All artists are censored. That means many artists had to leave Russia for fear that they would be killed. Okay. And any art that was produced had to glorify the Communist Party. So here we have some examples of the Great Purge. Okay. So here we have is someone in the Communist Party shooting the perceived enemies. Stalinist continues to build a totalitarian state. Okay, so the types of education that Stalin decides to do is he's starting from early grades to college. So he's already starting to try and indoctrinate people in the sort of communist way already when they're about 6 years old. Okay. Children, they're learning the virtues of the Communist Party. So children, the only images they're allowed to see are these sort of censored images glorifying Stalin's Soviet Union state, okay? The other thing is teachers who challenge the party, the Communist Party, they actually end up being punished. Some of them may even go missing, okay? This is the type, again, it's supposed to spark fear into people. If you do not say what we want you to say, we will remove you. So up until this point, religious persecution, Russia is an Orthodox Christian country. That means many people are worshiping Russian Orthodox, okay? This is slightly linked to the Catholic Church, okay? But when Stalin comes in, many of these magnificent churches, beautiful churches, and synagogues, they end up being destroyed, okay? So any of the Jewish synagogues, they're destroyed and the churches are destroyed. And all the leaders of these churches and synagogues, they end up being killed because they are, again, a perceived enemy. Basically, this is marking that all people are losing their personal rights and freedom. So if we remember, Stalin starts to make a new economic system, okay? Up until this point, we have Lenin's new economic plan in action. That allows communism with a little bit of capitalism. That means that some people are still allowed to have sort of small businesses on the side. What Stalin does is he sort of takes away that new economic plan of Lenin's and he creates a command economy. What that means is that the government makes all economic decisions, okay? So the government's going to decide what the USSR will sell, what the USSR will buy, okay? That means any farmer who has land, they are no longer allowed to grow what they would like. They have to grow what the government tells them to, okay? So as a way, in the command economy, we have this idea of the 5-year plan. And what the 5-year plan is trying to make Russia industrialize. But what ends up happening is because all production in the economy is dedicated to industrializing Russia, so it's looking for the production of steel and oil and looking for natural resources to sort of make Russia stronger with technology, it results in the stopping or the shortage of commercial goods. Now what commercial goods are or consumer goods. What consumer goods are things like basic food and housing. So while all these people are working to no end to try and industrialize Russia, they end up going starving and not being able to live anywhere, okay? So it's an imbalanced economy. They're focusing on the wrong thing. We do have an agricultural revolution. So in 1928, the government provides these collective farms. Now collective farms means, again, that the government controls it. They're not controlled by a farmer, okay? They're controlled by the government. What ends up happening is Russia is forcing these peasants to sort of work on these farms. And many people are dying because they don't have proper food or shelter. Again, because there's a shortage of consumer goods. So we have 5 to 10 million people dying because we have peasants who are unhappily working, okay? So by 1938, we have agricultural production rising. So here's some advertisings on Stalin's 5-year plan. This would be, again, propaganda. Again, here we have some more propaganda looking at how wonderful the collective farms are, when in fact, it's not really doing anything for the peasants. Daily life under Stalin. The only thing I'm going to sort of note about the daily life is the fact that women do gain some equality during this time. Okay, so many women are able to join the labor force and many women are still educated because they're seen as equal to anyone else in the country. Okay? My question for you this week is what are some of the downfalls of Stalin's 5-year plan? Okay? You can answer this either on YouTube or in your notes to show me on Monday.